I'm Ruth Russell, and I've been a cattle rancher since 1970. And my family has been blessed with a grandfather who had the foresight to buy land all over Texas in the early 1930s for like $5 to $8 an acre, pretty good deal. And so I hope this slideshow that's going to run continuously behind me is self-explanatory, but I hope it demonstrates the love and the passion that our family has for our land. And it will show you from our cattle ranching activities, our recreation activities, and our best management activities to restore habitat and all wildlife species. And of course, the pollinators and the monarch butterfly. It all is interconnected. And I also will be showing you a few of the biologists that so generously have helped us through the years. And lastly, I want to thank Arlene Kalmbach. She's kind of the point person for these partnership programs that the federal and state, and she's the one that told me to come and talk about partnerships. So let's get started. My object is to encourage private landowners, large and small, to realize the help and scientific data available to them through state and federal agencies, and to trust, join hands, and partner with these agencies to achieve the common goal we all have, to restore healthy habitats, diverse wildlife, and flowing waters. As I tell my story, I hope that my own hesitation and fears teach biologists from these agencies how to approach landowners and better understand their concerns. My mother, and particularly my grandmother, instilled in me a deep love of the land that has permeated my being, heart, and soul since I was old enough to toddle behind them, blazing trails to special picnic grounds, or riding at breakneck speeds through river bottoms jumping logs. Growing up on our hill country ranch my granddad bought in 1932, skinny dipping, swimming horses, and leaping off those rosy-colored cliffs into the crystal clear waters were an inexplicable joy I took for granted. Of course, the river, our sacred river, would always flow, just as rapidly as the sun rises and sets. Unfortunately, maturing also involved my realization that these precious waters were constantly under the threat of drought, exploding population, fragmentation, eminent domain, and an expanded monoculture of ash juniper and prickly pear, choking out the once expansive native grasslands. The habitats so treasured by upland birds, quail, and golden cheek warbler alike, as well as an endless variety of insects and butterflies, were becoming home to feral hogs and goats, aoudad, axis, cyca, and exotic introduced grasses and plants, encroaching on the native species. However, like most defiantly individual Texas ranchers, and man, is that the truth, my family was hesitant to seek outside help from a mistrusted federal or state agency. We thought by hiding the ranch and preventing access to strangers, we could protect the ranch. Nightmare stories created a paranoia that these agencies, armed with the Endangered Species Act, would somehow take over our land and our management, or even worse, build a huge dam which would flood our sacred river and springs, drowning out its beauty and priceless habitat forever. After years of receiving help from county and NRCS agents, along with the Texas Parks and Wildlife biologists, I've evolved to realize one person cannot save a river or a watershed alone. As we all know, 80 people here are agreeing with this, so I'm preaching to the choir. We landowners need the financial help and scientific expertise that all these agencies, private and government, generously offer. Partnerships give us power and the expanded knowledge we all need to open our minds and improve our properties. These choices are completely voluntary. Trust and collaboration are the keys to forming partnerships and our desperate struggle to conserve our resources. We are battling doubling population growth, and I may be a little off here, about 29 million today, close to 60 million in 2070, and an endless amount of straws draining our aquifers. Let's face it, as landowners and less than 1% of the population, we have much less clout than our huge, thirsty cities, in spite of owning over 90% of Texas land. Even so, the land we manage is priceless to all people, supplying air, water, food, fiber, timber, wildlife, and countless other benefits. Our healthy habitats protect open space, preserving, filtering, and recharging water. No one, even a child who has never left the city limits, wants a world of concrete. It feeds the spirits of all humans to know we have vast fields of wildflowers, deer, wild turkey, multicolored butterflies and birds, buzzing bees, javelina and quail, all playing their part to sustain our interconnected ecosystems. I'm not sure what made me extricate myself from my innate family distrust of land resource agencies, but I did bite the bullet when I acquired my first ranch, Las Animas, in Jim Hogg County. We found a dilapidated, overgrazed disaster. This is a unique ecoregion known as the sand sheet, more diverse than any other Texas region. But we found thick scrub brush and mostly barren sand. My husband was a chemist and I an artist. Not so cool to undergo what we were about to do. We reached out to our county agent and the Soil Conservation Service, now NRCS. Their help was nothing short of amazing and totally landowner friendly. Our agent gave us rotational grazing and brush management plans, accurate soil maps, and even helped us work cattle. We got help from private agronomists, Clayburgh Research, Texas Parks and Wildlife biologists, and enrolled in the MLD permit program to manage our deer. In 2000, we traded for our Dimmitt County ranch, Blas Reyes, and we enrolled in an EQUIP program with NRCS to clear mesquite and plant grass. Unfortunately, the need to restore native grasses was not yet a priority, and our plan had to include buffalo grass because the focus was on livestock and drought-resistant grasses. Thus entered the increased problem of exotic grass invasion. TxDOT decided to plant Clayburgh bluestem up and down our highways, and now it is gobbling up native grasses and literally taking over Texas. My next big move was to get on the Texas Nature Advisory Board, mainly so I could assuage my distrust and discover what they were truly about. I found out the Nature Conservancy had become much more landowner friendly. Many were landowners themselves, had my same goals, and were not there to take ranches. I began to trust the conservation easement idea as a contract of my voluntary choices, all of which would conserve and permanently protect my treasured family lands. I met Blair Fitzsimmons of TALT, Texas Agricultural Land Trust, and I knew I'd found the perfect fit to hold my conservation easement on Sycamore Canyon, along that most pristine river, the Devils. Their goal to preserve family farms, ranches, and wild places while trusting the landowner to manage was what my son, William and McLean, and I really wanted. The TALT message was simple and resonating: no land, no water. We turned to Texas Parks and Wildlife biologist, and I met my new mentor and friend, Joyce Moore, who helped us get a 1D1 wildlife exemption for Sycamore Canyon. We even received the honor of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Lone Star Award, which is chosen by Private Lands Advisory Committee, of which I'm now a member. PLAC is another prime example of a state agency, Texas Parks and Wildlife, reaching out to seek the advice and desires of Texas private landowners and to award them for being the best of the best land restoration managers. All this background of seeking state agency help and getting results gave me the confidence to convince my extended, very suspicious family of these great resources and monetary aid. Partnerships are just as important within families to bridge the disconnect between both differences of opinion and younger generations. My mother had passed away, and her Hill Country Ranch became our duty to manage. This ranch is the lifeblood of our family, and truly one of the most beautiful and special water properties in Texas. Cedar, prickly pear, and mesquite have spread like a tumor to the detriment of our wildlife and spring flow. As mentioned, exotic mammals and plants were encroaching at an alarming rate. So we turned to NRCS, Texas Parks and Wildlife biologists, and Texas A&M for help. That's when Joyce told me about LIP, the Landowners Incentive Program, and I've been told you're going to hear a lot more about that today. This program is a partnership between the landowner or cooperator, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Texas Parks and Wildlife for rare resource enhancement. We worked with Chris Harper from Federal Fish and Game and Joyce, who designed the project of 270 acres of cedar removal to restore historic savanna grasslands, forests, and shrubs. This would result in improved retention of rainwater, promote soil conservation, and improve watershed health, thus better quality and quantity for the benefit of numerous wildlife species, including monarch butterflies, golden cheek warblers, and the multiple varieties of freshwater mussels. The option for all information to be completely confidential exists, but I chose that all information gained could be shared with conservation cooperators while keeping the ranch name and landowner name private. You will not hear the name of our ranch today. That ranch. Knowledge is meant to be shared and is necessary for scientific progress. Brush clearing is extremely expensive, and I knew my family, with their varying opinions, would never vote to spend this much money. LIP will pay up to 50% of the restoration cost of an approved project, and that was the ticket for my family to agree. So Johnny, Joyce, Chris, myself, and our foreman, Billy Mogford, packed into our Polaris to tour the ranch and pick the best area to start. Despite a deluge of rain battering our faces, we selected an area of rolling hills with a lush valley and a steep cliff-like slope with a good variety of hardwood and cedar trees that would harbor golden cheek warblers. The rich soiled valley had great potential for milkweed, wildflowers, and native grass response. The steep sides of the hills we left untouched, and Joyce pointed out valuable plants like redbud, escarpment black cherry, cedar elm, kidneywood to carefully avoid. We chose to leave slash instead of large brush piles to create havens for seed and grass to germinate, protected from deer and exotics. The following year, LIP had run out of money, so Joyce suggested we turn to the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. Our ranch would partner with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to add another 170 acres of improved habitat to our upper watershed and hopefully attract migratory birds and pollinators. Brendan Witt gave us technical advice and project approval and submitted various required maps. We did all the work ourselves using a skid loader, excavator, and bulldozer for fire lanes. So far, the results have been astounding. Forbs like antelope hard, milkweed, Dakota verbena, Maximilian sunflowers, blackfoot daisies, salvias, gay feather, and native grasses like side oak scrammer, silver bluestem, buffalo grass, plains bristle, and green sprangletop are covering the newly opened meadows. Now we see large coveys of quail, where before to see even a pair was rare. And we, because of these results, were so inspired, we're now doing 2 special butterfly or pollinator plots this next summer or fall there at the ranch. Our efforts are not a magic pill. Prickly pear, cedar regrowth, acacias, knife-edge candelia, and agarita, although necessary for diversity, threaten to become too thick. Our prescribed burns must continue, and luckily are the cheapest tool for brush control. I have one more page. Currently, we are enrolled in another LIP program on our West Texas ranch near Alpine, applying spike herbicide to tarbush and mariola, hoping to encourage native grasses and expand adjacent antelope and upland bird habitat. Next year, we hope to continue working with the LIP and our local Texas Parks biologist, Mike Janis, who, like Joyce, has been so helpful. He has set out time-lapse cameras on our mountains to record landscape changes. We have further partnered with Russell Martin of U.S. Fish and Wildlife on his Golden Eagle study. Professionals rappel down steep rimrock cliffs to attach telemetry collars on 2 hatchlings. Borderlands Research Institute has worked with Texas Parks and Wildlife to make sure our fences are antelope friendly by lifting the bottom wire 18 inches and by releasing antelope. BRI is also conducting a mule deer research project on our ranch that Thomas Janke is managing, using helicopter capture and measuring about everything possible on a male deer. BRI has put monitoring cameras at all our feeders and can trace each deer by the color of their ear tag. You may be getting tired of these projects, but there is one more LIP just approved by Arlene Kalmbach. Blas Reyes Ranch is in deep South Texas brushlands, and huge canopies of mesquite and multi-storied cactus now cover this rich delta between the Nueces River and Soldier Slough. This ranch was heavily farmed by my father. where cabbage, carrots, onions, and spinach used to grow, is now covered with almost impenetrable brush, invaded by clayberg bluestem, and barren ground. Improving this over 8,000 ranch haunts my dreams, but it is unique with its huge old-growth oaks, river delta, and brush diversity. The whitetail grow huge antlers. Owls, hawks, turkey, quail, and waterfowl abound. But so do the feral hogs, and there is no way to hunt a quail. We have confined our cattle to the open fields farmed in the past, and the result we have left as a wildlife sanctuary, no man's land, so to speak. Blaise Corsecqua from Texas Parks and Wildlife has stepped up and encouraged us to control mesquite with Sendero and follow up with surmount on the cactus. Sorry, herbicides, but it'll end up being fine, y'all. Without financial aid, our ability to improve our land would be limited. Our precious open space deserves more. Food security and all economic well-being depend on the resources of open space. So I close with this quote. The best partnerships aren't dependent on a mere common goal, but on a shared path of equality, desire, and no small amount of passion. Thanks.